G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at, well, Heresy 2.5 in a way. So, why do I bring up the Heresy 2.5 thing? Well, obviously, we're in the second edition of the game right now. So, clearly different rule set to the previous edition. That's how we're marking it. We sort of had Horus Heresy 1.0 and we had Heresy 1.5, which was released basically after 8th edition 40k as a continuation of the 7th edition rule set for the Horus Heresy. This is a markedly different version of the game from that, and the rumours are swirling that we're going to be getting another edition of this game. But it's not going to be a totally different edition, it's just going to be a slight tweak of this one, hence 2.5. Pretty simple, right? So, I'm going to tell a story to start with. I play Helldivers. Obviously, Helldivers 2 is very popular at the moment, and I've been playing it with my friends repeatedly. Fair few nights of the week we get on there and we play an hour or two. And that's all good and well. And the more we've played Helldivers, the more we've noted how things have gotten worse in the game. How the balance has gotten worse, the enemies have gotten worse, it feels like less of a power fantasy of living out Starship Troopers, and how the game has generally just degraded into almost a punishing experience as opposed to a power fantasy, which is what those sort of games really are meant to be. And so this was very interesting. And what I watched the other day was a video from the developers on this, talking about this big patch that they've got coming up. And in this big patch that they've got coming up, they talk about how many new units they're adding to the game, and all of the units they're adding to the game just look just awful, because they double down on the things that have made the game less enjoyable, and the things that the community has vocally been saying do not do these sort of units. Community has noted that ragdolling from robot missiles is a huge issue, and the new robot unit that gets introduced is a tank with a massive rocket system. So immediately it's like, what the hell? For the bugs, people hate chargers. We're sick of fighting chargers. And the very next unit they show is a charger. So these are obviously issues, because you see the same sort of thing in other games, like Warhammer, where the community says, please don't do this, and then it happens. Or they say, this is a mechanic that we don't like, and it gets doubled down upon. And then there was an interesting thing that happened in the video that I watched. And that was where some people from the development team playing the game were fighting some chargers. And you're just watching them using small arms fire against these big bugs. Now, these bugs, for those who don't play, they're gargantuan, these crushers, and they're very similar to something like a Carnifex for Tyranids. This big armoured behemoth. It's like a battle tank with legs, a biological battle tank with legs, okay? And they're shooting at it with weapons that cannot possibly hurt it, especially from that direction. There is a sort of quote-unquote weak spot at the back of it, where if you get around behind it and you do like 10 mag dumps, yeah, you'll kill the thing. But that's not what they were shooting. They were trying to shoot at its front arms and its head, which are all literally battle tank armor. And obviously this was failing spectacularly. It shouldn't shock anyone that this was what was happening. And I thought to myself, these are the very people who are making the game, telling us how to enjoy it, are responsible for balancing the game, and yet they clearly have no clue how to actually play the game, because everything they're doing is wrong. So if these people are making all of their decisions about what works, what doesn't, what's balanced, what isn't, based off the wrong assumptions in the first place, naturally there's going to be some major issues at the ground level. And then instantly I think to the Horus Heresy, and we see the parallels straight away, because we look at the units and the types of lists that they would show and preview and the missions that they write, and all of them seem to be targeted by people who you just think to yourself, they mustn't play the game if this is what they've come up with. And it makes me think, they actually don't play the game. Or if they do, they're playing a version of the game which is so stylized because they're playing in maybe their local small community, or they're playing within the studio workshop, and they're using the most bland and vanilla lists that are not representative of the sort of lists that players would bring to a game system. And then they have a certain performance based upon this. And then they go, yes, we think this works perfectly as intended. When they've set up a series of unrealistic scenarios and a strong confirmation bias takes place. In addition to that problem, we also have the feedback issues, where we know a lot of people who've done playtesting with Games Workshop have often pointed out the problems because they are actually players, which proves that playtesting can be done correctly. And they will say, this doesn't work, and this doesn't work. And yet the feedback is not acted upon. So there is no point to them actually performing these roles of creating the feedback and doing the playtesting if it's going to be roundly ignored anyway. So it's very interesting to see how this is actually played out in the long term. And I think it has done an awful lot to diminish Heresy 2.0. I would be surprised if it's much healthier than Heresy 1.0 was after 5 years of neglect. No one can claim that Heresy 1 was being particularly well looked after by the company. It was very much an afterthought to them, pretty much from, I'd say, from prior to the Blood Angels and White Scars book, from book 8. I don't think they put any effort in after Prospero. Prospero, famously, Alan Bligh, the original author behind the series, who was writing those black books, whose brainchild it was for the setting, for the core rules, he famously passed away essentially within the week of that book dropping to the wider world, which is a great loss because everything that man touched turned to gold. Like, he just knew what players liked in hobby and was himself one of us, a player. And with his passing, essentially the game went to another development team who, a bit of Dunning-Kruger effect, thought very highly of their own personal skills, and they were not up to par with the job, but insisted that they not only were, but that they were doing an even better job to some degree than what Alan did. And everything they touched just had issues from that point on. And I never heard as much groaning from the Horus Heresy community, myself included in there, as I did from that book 7 period onwards. There was a lot of groaning and eye-rolling and people looking at these rules and saying, hey, there's not enough stuff in this book, it's undercooked, these rules are unbalanced. These were not issues that we had in the early books. And yet from book 7 onwards, again, Alan Bligh being sick for a very long time leading up to it, I'm sure much more of the work that went into that book, which is famously imbalanced, with the Custodes, the Thousand Suns, the original Space Wolves rules, they're all very, very broken in various degrees. The Space Wolves players at the time were more just pissy that they weren't as broken as everyone else. They were still broken in comparison to everything that came before. But I digress. The love went out of it, and obviously the writing got worse. And then we look into Heresy 2.0, and we see very interesting things written by the people who helped develop it and write rules for it. And we would see things like some of the authors saying, well, it doesn't matter that so many more units in the game are more deadly towards vehicles. We gave vehicles an extra hull point. And you just think, you wrote this game, and you think that one extra hull point that can be taken off by any glance, or a double weapon destroyed result, for example, or a double immobilized result, because double results add an extra hull point of damage. You think that an extra hull point of damage is going to make up for all las cannons being fired at you, getting rerolls to see if they do penetrating damage? I don't think you know how this game works, and these people don't. And yet they are so confident in their own skills and that they know what's best, they will sit there and proudly put posts up on, basically on YouTube, Facebook, on different forums, blogs they're a part of, whatever, and tell you that everything is peachy and that actually you are wrong for thinking there's an issue with the game system. Now, all of this would be fine in a system that was free. Alright, for all intents and purposes, it was free. It was just given out, here's some PDF rules, do with it as you will. The problem is that everyone's invested into this game system with substantial portions of actual hard money. Real money has been exchanged for a faulty game system. And so you look at Heresy 2.0 as the time for them to come in and remedy the faults. To go, okay, this is essentially an FAQ for the system that's designed to fix things like the power imbalance of dreadnoughts, how strong they are, or that we're going to look at the vehicle rules and go, okay, we've really stuffed vehicles in this edition of the game. Vehicle squadrons don't work. How does damage done to one tank miraculously carry over to a different vehicle? Why do vehicles have to maintain a 4-inch coherency? It makes it really difficult to move squadrons around the battlefield or to get line of sight. Why do all the vehicles in the same squadron have to shoot the same target? Meanwhile, dreadnoughts, brought together as a talon, the equivalent of a squadron, can all go their own separate ways on the table. They don't have to shoot the same target as one another, don't have to be armed the same as one another. There's a whole host of questions. Oh, and of course, damage famously doesn't carry over from one to the other. So there's a whole host of questions here about why they would write rules in a certain way. And we have to hope that if they're doing a Heresy version 2, they have miraculously fixed these issues. Now, this is the Warhammer community website. As you can see, there is an awful lot going on here for the Horus Heresy. Really not an awful lot going on here. But if I was to go into downloads and we go into the Horus Heresy, and I scroll down, we have an FAQ and errata. Let's just pick any one of these. Let's go Liber Imperium. All right, Liber Imperium. And this is all of the problems they can come up with. 1.5 pages. All the problems they can come up with for all of the Space Marine Loyalist forces. I shouldn't say Space Marine Loyalist forces. This would be the Custodes, the Sisters of Silence, the Solar Auxilia, those Imperial forces, not the Astartes. I do apologise. I misspoke. But that's it, 1.5 pages. You want to tell me there's only 1.5 pages of issues? All right, let's try another example then. Let's go the Liber Astartes. So this would be the Loyal Astartes, the Loyalist Astartes forces. And this is at 2 and well, if you can call that 2 full pages. I reckon you could fit all of this into 2 pages, because that's a massive gap on the left-hand side of this page. So basically, 2 pages worth of faults, especially if you remove this blurb up the top of the document. You definitely fit it all into 2 pages. So you're telling me there's only 2 pages worth of faults in the entire book that covers, let's see, Dark Angels, White Scars, Imperial Fists, Space Wolves, Blood Angels, Iron Hands, Salamanders, Raven Guard, and all of the units tied in with that, and Ultramarines as well. All of that, all of those different legions, all of their unique Primarchs, unique units, unique rights of war, their legion-specific war gear, all of that combined, and all of the units that are available to every faction, and you could only come up with 2 pages. Okay. Sure, why not? And some of the questions that you get in these are just sort of, why are you asking it? Why are you asking me these questions? We get a lot of those sort of rules written in these FAQs. Oh, I'm having an awful day here trying to record. See, this is normally where I would re-record a video, because these videos are all done off the cuff. I don't write scripts. Maybe this is proof that I should write scripts. But I digress. What about the main rulebook for the game? The Age of Darkness rulebook. Here we have, what? And this is after 2 years? 8 pages. 8 pages, okay, some of them are a bit more filled with questions than others. But 8 pages for the entire game system. That's not an awful lot. And reactions. The one new phase they've added to the game is what? First page, part of the second page? So a whole page, like 1/8 of this entire document, is just for the one new, what would we say? Phase, I don't want to say. The one new gameplay mechanic. The one new gameplay mechanic they added is causing 1/8 of all the faults in the entire system, you would say. Okay, that's a bit weird, right? What about the way some of these rules work? Like, questions. If a model has joined a unit or been allocated to another unit using an ability which is used instead of making a shooting attack, does this prevent the rest of the unit from making a shooting attack? No. Like, I get it, it's a legitimate question, but is that really the most vital question that needed asking? And I know some of the questions that have been sent into them for FAQing that just haven't been answered. When mounted on a vehicle, are weapons without a strength characteristic, such as graviton weapons, treated as a battle weapon? Yes. Super, super niche question. So we get a lot of these sort of questions. Now, out of curiosity, if I was to go back to this downloads tab and go up to, I don't know, let's pick Warhammer 40,000, and let's look at the core rules updates and commentary. And this game is, what, a few months old, a year old now? What are we at for 40k, which is a quote-unquote simpler game with less things going on? Well, it's a full colour thing with actual artwork, even if it is minor stuff added in. Compare that to the quality of the Heresy. Here's a white page with some text. So there's a lot more care taken in the FAQ. 17 pages, 18 pages. How many pages total have we got here? Oh, and full colour illustrated artworks to really help drive the point home on things. 30 pages. Well, we got 31, 32. Oh, it keeps going. 33 pages. 33 pages. And it's actually laid out to look nice and it looks professional. It looks like this is the sort of document you could print out and actually take along to your games versus what someone has typed up in Microsoft Word in 5 minutes. So it's not like they're putting an awful lot of effort into what they're doing over in the Horus Heresy. Like 8 pages for a system that's twice as old in its current incarnation as 40k, and 40k is giving you visual representations, and supposedly 40k is the simpler, more streamlined game, so there's a lot less going on there in the rules, right? A lot less that needs FAQing or resolving than the Horus Heresy does, because it's a much more simple game system, right? And a much more simple game system, therefore, would need far less clarifications. So either you take this as okay, they've really stuffed up on the core rules of 40k, or they're just putting minimal effort into 30k. I personally had never even looked at the Warhammer 40k FAQ, no word of a lie, until right now, and I'm actually shocked looking at it, how nice this looks. These actually look like pages from a rulebook have just been reprinted in here. Yeah, I didn't know that they were getting this good a treatment. Do the FAQs for the actual factions look like this? Like if I look up, Space Marines. Okay, so they're a little bit lazier. They're a bit more like the Horus Heresy ones. Well, that's something. But the Space Marines themselves, one minor faction without an awful lot going on in the game, has about as many FAQs as, what was the... I don't have the FAQ up still anymore, but that's got to be a pretty similar amount of FAQs. What, a page, half a page less than what the Space Marines in the Horus Heresy have for their FAQs. And that's got to cover 18 distinct legions between the two different PDF documents. Like, just saying, there are, like, what, 3-4 times as many units in the Legiones Astartes / Hereticus books as there are in the Space Marine 40k Codex. So you'd imagine that there would be something that was much longer, right? And all, of course, those different Legion traits. But no, apparently... Yeah. Anyway, my point being, after all of this rambling, is that clearly something is going on with the actual writing of the game. Either a lack of input from the writers, or they're just not trying, in short. Or when they are trying, they're drawing the wrong conclusions from the game because they're playing in an isolated situation. Or they're getting the feedback they need for the game, like from playtesters, but they don't like the feedback they're getting, so they choose to ignore it. One of these scenarios is going on. And it's not fair on the Horus Heresy community, and the game is hurting it for it, is suffering for it, and in fact, like, if we go on the Warhammer 40 website, obviously, the Heresy, the last new releases, was back a month ago now, and it was literally just some basic shit. But if I go up the top here, you can see Heresy was considered one of the mainline games, and that was said in the financial reports for the preceding last several years. Now it's in the More tab. 40k and Sigmar are being pushed very much to the fore. Sigmar, I don't think, is anywhere near popular enough. Like, I would think it's less popular than Horus Heresy in many areas, but it's personal taste. 40k is obviously the big winner. I can understand putting that front and center on all of this, but it shows you where the priorities lie. I think they just see 40k as the cash cow, and that's the only one that's getting some actual effort put into it. I think Age of Sigmar's sculpts on the whole are better than what 40k is doing. I also think its rules on the whole are better than what 40k is doing. But I think it's nowhere near as appealing as a game system because the world, the universe that it inhabits is just awful. And they've been trying for years to make it more interesting and spice it up, but it will never get over the fact that it doesn't have that rich history of the old world. And everything they come up with for Age of Sigmar is like eye-rollingly cringe. And, well, nearly everything. There's a few good things in there, and I'd be doing a disservice to say otherwise. But anyway, that's it. That's my little whinge for the day. So please, let me know what you think in the comments below. Back to the outer circle, and I'll see you on a video soon.